Hello, in this video we are going to go over viruses. So I know that this class is going to primarily focus on living things, and the videos that I talk about are primarily, biology related, but we still should talk about viruses because viruses affect living things. So viruses are very tiny, non-living pathogens. They are extremely tiny, by the way. They are much smaller than bacteria. So here's bacteria, here are the animals and plant cells. So viruses are much, much smaller than that. Again, they are not part of the tree of life. They're not made of cells, so they are not living, but they still infect living things, and so that's really important to talk about. So viruses, they have very simple structures when we're comparing them to bacteria and eukaryotes. So here is the most basic structure of a virus. So every virus should have some kind of genetic material, whether it's DNA or RNA. Notice that I put or, it's usually not both, it's one or the other. So unlike living things that use DNA as their genetic material and RNA to help them make protein, for viruses, it's just one or the other. Viruses also have some kind of protective layer around their DNA or RNA, and that is called the capsid. So a capsid is made up of these proteins called capsomeres, and it's basically like a shell that protects the genetic material. So here is a capsid protecting the DNA. Here is a capsid protecting the RNA. Again, it just depends on the virus. And most viruses have some kind of way to attach to their host. So the whole point of a virus is to find a living host, get inside, take over, and make more viruses. And the first thing it needs to do is attach to its host using either spike proteins, which are these guys here, or if you're a bacteriophage, you're going to have these tail fibers. By the way, a bacteriophage is a virus that infects bacteria. That's really cool. And here is a picture of that, of a real bacteriophage attaching to its bacteria. Anyway, there are also some viruses that have these optional structures. Again, these are structures that are not found in all viruses, but are optional. So the envelope is essentially a phospholipid layer surrounding the virus. And so some viruses have it. So down here, this virus has it. This virus does not. And then there's also the sheath. Again, this is found in bacteriophages primarily, where it is a kind of structure that helps the virus bacteriophage inject its DNA or RNA into its host. So that's a pretty cool feature that is found usually only in these bacteriophages. Viruses come in different kinds of shapes and sizes. As you can see, they can be like helical shape or just a blob, but a lot of them are in this kind of crazy icosahedral structure. By the way, this is three-dimensional. Hopefully, maybe this one helps. But yeah, it's a weird structure. Viruses are very weird, as you can tell. When we are trying to categorize viruses, and in this diagram, we're really looking primarily at human pathogenic viruses. When we're categorizing them, we obviously don't categorize them the same as we do with, living things because they're not living things. So the first thing we do is we look at their genome, so the genetic material. We look at whether the genetic material is DNA or RNA. And we also look at whether that genetic material is single-stranded or double-stranded. So viruses change a lot of the rules that we know of in terms of biology. So some viruses have double-stranded DNA, that's normal, but some viruses have single-stranded DNA, that's obviously not normal. And then in the RNA world, they can have single-stranded RNA, but they can also have double-stranded RNA, which is, again, not normal in biology. And when it comes to the RNA, they can have positive or negative sense RNA, which I will discuss in a different video, but essentially it's like if the information in RNA is written in the forward direction or backwards, basically. So viruses are really weird, right? In terms of their genome, they kind of break all of the rules that we know. And when we're looking at viruses, we also classify them based on if they have that envelope or not. So that phospholipid bilayer. Some viruses do have it, so we call them envelope viruses. The ones that don't have it, we call them naked viruses. And here's just a table, obviously you don't need to memorize this table, but it's just cool to see all of the different viruses. and how we kind of categorize them. Now, the last thing I want to talk about in this video are the pathogenic molecules that are not viruses, but are still very interesting. So the first one are the viriyoids. Viriyoids are pieces of RNA that are circular, and they infect the host and replicate. Notice that it's just RNA. They don't have a capsid, they don't have spike proteins, they just somehow get into their host and infect. So one example is this potato spindle tuber virioid that apparently infects potato plants and makes the potatoes look like that. These are very, rare, and it's hard to study virioids. If you can imagine, they're just pieces of RNA. So not really much information about them. And then there are the prions. Prions are these proteins that are infectious. So again, there's no capsid, there's no genetic material, there's no spike proteins or anything. They are just proteins. And what's crazy about them is there's this protein called PRPC. PRPC looks, like this normally. Obviously, this is just a cartoon, but this is the normal PRPC protein. Now, if the PRPC protein is misfolded, meaning that it is not in the right shape, then we call it PRPSC. Okay. Now, what's scary about this misfolded PRPC protein is that if it interacts with a normal PRPC protein, it will cause that normal one to also convert into the misfolded one. And as you can imagine, this causes a domino effect because even just one misfolded protein can touch that one, and then now that one's going to be misfolded, and then there's like this domino effect. All of the proteins will eventually be misfolded, right? That's really scary. So prion infections are typically neurological. So a lot of prion infections affect the brain. So here's a normal brain, and if you have a lot of these prion proteins, your brain will have a totally, different shape. And obviously that's not good. So there's different types of prions, and different types of infections and diseases caused by prions, but very scary to think about because again, this is just a protein, right? It's not even moving around or anything. It's just there. And once it's there, it just causes this domino effect and the rest of your proteins misfold. So very creepy. But yeah, just wanted to have a little slide on the kind of weirder, not really viruses, but still infectious agents. And that's all I had for this video. I will have another video where I go over how viruses actually infect and all of that. But hopefully this video was helpful, and I will see you in the next video.